Welcome to Kidmin Backstage, the place where we talk about kids ministry and take a peek behind the scenes. We try to share a little bit of what we've learned that works for us and some of our failures so you can avoid them. We release a new episode every Friday, and this is your backstage pass to see the magic or disaster that happens behind the scenes of our kids ministry. I'm your host, Gabe Baker, and today I am joined by Brother Brent Wilson.
Oh, good evening.
How's it going?
Good.
So here we are in the, it's
Winter Wonderland.
Winter Wonderland, and it actually is snowing outside, which is kind of cool. So now when this airs, spring is right around the corner.
Yes.
But it is snowing here in Washington. So, all right, well, what are we talking about today? What's our title?
Today's topic. So, are you done?
So,
That's
are you
the title.
done? That's the title. We have an ellipsis, and so are you done? Yes. Okay, so in my notes, here's kind of what I have. I'm not going to follow it exactly. I wrote it. It sounds so cool when I read it, but so your most meaningful contributions in God's kingdom, if you're in God's will, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The disclaimer.
Disclaimer there. Yes. Good.
If you're in God's will, your most meaningful contributions, you haven't even seen them yet.
Right.
So the biggest things that you're going to do for God, you haven't seen it yet. And so what I wrote is that it's not just about experience. Experience has a lot of value.
Right.
But it's not about experience. It's about having an open mind and allowing God to use us. Because, and I don't want to stomp all over future notes, but our pastor, Pastor Bird, he talks all the time about God's kingdom is intended to grow. It is God's will to grow. And so while there are things that we can do to, have growth, evangelism, all these things, he talks about our mission is to remove the inhibitors to growth. We remove the things that stunt the growth, because if we do that, it will grow, because that's how it's designed. God designed it to grow. So all of that long explanation to say that, we've done some cool things around our kids ministry. We've seen some awesome things. We've seen people get the Holy Ghost. We've seen all these great things. We've done amazing themes and awesome sets. But let's not sit back and point back at our awesome space theme.
Right.
And our awesome, when we built a river up here. Those are cool things. And let's not just point. Let's look ahead and see what's the next great thing.
What's coming up? What's ahead? Right. That's true. I guess you don't want to get too much into the past.
Yeah.
Or caught up in the past, and holding, there's a lot of times where people hold on to the past too much and instead of, moving forward, or just, letting the past be the past and focusing on what's in front of you. What's the future?
Yeah.
What this week went great, but what's coming next week?
Yes.
Say, I wish this would have happened this morning. Say we had 3 kids get the Holy Ghost. Next week, let's see 6,
Yeah, looking
but
ahead, yeah.
Since we didn't have any, let's get one. It's been a while. We had some good prayer at altar call today, which again, it's easy to look back of, there was a stretch here a while ago, late last year, where we had back-to-back weeks of great altar call and kids really worshiping and everything like that, and then it kind of fizzled, and it's like, but again, let's not focus on that's the past. Now let's aim for
to go higher.
Higher, exactly.
To the next level.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that it's. I heard this one time. I can't remember who said it, but it's bad when you have a couple of 50, 60-year-olds sitting out on the porch talking about that touchdown they made in high school. If that's how far back they have to look for a highlight, something's wrong, right?
Something didn't add up.
And so that's where we want our highlights to be, ongoing. And
right.
So I guess, and I was trying to decide what to title this. I almost titled it Washed Up.
Washed up. Okay, yeah.
And so I guess for somebody out there, and a lot of times this has to do with age, and we will talk about age a little bit, but I guess in one way, I want people to feel like, hey, it's not over.
Right.
You're not done. You're not washed up. God has plans for your life, and of course, we're going to talk about some of that. But so the first point, though, is it's a different world now, and it is right in every sense of the word. Nor I are not very old. I'm a little tiny bit older than you, but we're not very old. But it's such a different world.
Yes.
So I remember, we're getting into the old man stories. I remember when I had to walk barefoot in the snow, uphill both ways to school. No, I remember when my dad, he was a contractor, and I remember when he got a cell phone. Now, this was, for those on video, this is like this big. It was called a bag phone.
Yeah, the bag phone.
Which was actually really cool because it was more portable than the ones that they got installed in the car.
In the cars, yeah.
Because you could actually take it with you to somewhere and plug it in. But it was a bag phone, so it was about the size of a shoebox, roughly, this whole system, know. The phone actually had a cradle that kind of snapped in, and then you would undo the phone, and it had buttons on the back, and you would, you'd dial the phone, and it had a cord on it. And so, in fact, I remember one time we were driving through town, and we saw a chimney fire, and he used his phone to call 911,
That's
in
hilarious.
the truck. But he was like on the cutting edge. He was like the only one that hit, and I'm not that old, okay? But he was like the only one around that had a cell phone, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And it was this bag phone in the truck.
Jeez.
And then, I remember I have pictures of me with I was like one of the few teenagers that had a phone, and it was this big old, it was like the size of, I don't know, a couple decks of cards at least, it was a pretty big bulky phone. But anyway,
the world has changed.
Yeah, the world has changed. And I'm using that because it's technology. And so I wanted, and I remember seeing somewhere, we don't watch TV, but I saw it on an ad, probably on TV, but I saw the advertisement for the first iPhone. And now, whatever people iPhone, Android, Samsung, whatever the different phones are, they're all, it seems like pretty close to the same, and it's just more of a preference thing nowadays.
Yep.
But when that first iPhone came out, it was revolutionary.
Yes.
I mean, when you saw somebody stretch on the screen, or just touch the screen and swipe and the stuff rolled past, it was like mind-boggling.
I had a boss who bought, when it first came out, had it.
Got the first one.
And showed it, and it was just like, it was just so foreign, so weird.
Oh, yeah.
What is this? This is weird. That'll never catch on. That's, what?
Well, I remember I went to get a phone, and I was telling the guy, I was kind of looking at the iPhone. I was like, that looks kind of cool. And I was like, he's like, what are you going to use it for? And at the time, I was doing some sales, and I was like, oh, business stuff. And so he got me this other, it was a dumb phone, but he got me this other phone, and I had wished so bad that, later on that I had gotten the iPhone. But anyway, so it's a different world now. Technology is at lightning speed. There's all these different things. And there's social media, and there's all the negatives with that, that come with, especially with teenagers and even kids.
Right.
And so there's all this pressure and everything. Boy, that was a long explanation to get where I'm going. Where I'm going with that is the title of this bullet is, it's a different world now. But this should not be an excuse of the good old days.
Right.
It shouldn't be an excuse for, well, this is why we're, I'm going to blast, ourselves and maybe other people, but this is why we're lackluster, is because, we can't compete with the world. I hear that all the time. We can't compete with the entertainment industry, and we're not per se, but instead it should be, it's a different world now, and this should be the reason why we can do so much more.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, and it's the same. Like, we don't want to compete with the world. They can have their way and be lost. We're trying to do something that is opposite of the world.
Exactly. We're not.
So I guess one thing, we just don't be getting caught up in in trying to compete with the world. Yeah, you know, we have bus kids, so we're trying to compete with what they're seeing probably at home or doing at home and and whatnot. But
we want them to feel something different.
Yeah, we want want it to be different. We don't want it to feel, oh, this was exciting. It reminded me of a movie or something, you know, or something. Or they go home and they're talking about Sunday school and how it was like, you know, and it's a bad example as we're doing Narnia right now, but still, you know, a lot of them haven't even heard of Narnia to begin with. But
it was funny because I did ask somebody in the sanctuary. I had asked them before we came into Sunday school and, you know, in the service, something about Narnia, and they're like, it's a movie. I said, well, they did make a movie, yes, but that's not where it started.
Not the origin of it. Yes, I should have said that too. It's like, it's a worldly movie, but and we're doing it as a theme, but it was not the original. It was not a
and that was
didn't
not
start
the
out
original
that way.
intent either. And so. And I guess, and this could get into a whole other subject, is don't let the world hijack something we do. I mean, they made a movie. Mel Gibson did the Passion of the Christ movie too.
That's true.
So, but and we're not competing with the world, but we're also not using that as an excuse. Like, okay, the world has, you know, all these movies and they have all these things that they do, and there's no way we can compete. We are still doing very cool and exciting things. We're still doing full-on drama in Sunday school, skits, crazy themes, all of this.
Right.
But it's coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Israel Houghton, and that is how you pronounce it. I was at a concert when he said that's how you pronounce it. So it looks like Houghton or something, but it's Houghton. Yeah, so anyway, I remember hearing him in an intro to a song or something, and I don't remember what the song is, but he says something, and I thought it was really good, and this has been several years ago, but he said that we're living in the greatest time, and that may be part of the song actually, but he says we're living in the greatest time, and he said the apostles just wish that they had the internet and the social media and all of this stuff. And I thought, what a different take, you know, on it. And believe me, there's all kinds of negatives, you know, and we are not, you know, pro any of those things that are negative. But if we could say it's a different world now, and that's why we're so much more effective. That's why we're so much more on the cutting edge.
You don't think about it that way, but you use it, think about it, twist it, and like, okay, what if they had, what levels would they have reached in their ministry alone?
Yeah, exactly. And I like to say sometimes, like, we're doing parables in Sunday school, you know. We're teaching these stories and doing it on a level where these kids can get it, and they're saturated with all this entertainment. But yet they come to school or Sunday school and they get this, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 2, I alluded to this in the opening, but when was your last failure? And so, going back to the old men on the porch, there, of course, I was talking about highlights, but if your last failure, your last flop, and when I say failure, I don't mean like morally or anything like that, but if your last flop when you did something in kids ministry was, you know, years ago, you're probably not pushing the boundaries enough.
Right.
And so now I'm not advocating just go out and fail. I talk about, you know, we talk about all the time being prepared. I know Brother Booker talks about, you know, when you're doing a Christian illusion, practice it beforehand.
That's what I was going to say is don't just, you know,
don't wing it.
Just because you failed, don't just keep maybe the same approach that had led to that failure.
Learn
from it and improve on it. Don't just keep trying the same thing over and over.
Yes.
That's the insanity thing.
Do the same thing over and over
expecting a different result.
So I run youth as well, and so almost always when I do games, like, you know, some kind of activity or game, I test it at least to a little bit of a level, because sometimes they don't work out like they work in theory. Even if there's a video of it, it's like, oh, that's so cool. But then when you get down to the practical, okay, look, when you throw this ball and do that, oh, that doesn't work. And you got to adjust it or whatever. So you don't want to find that out. And I have, found it out live, but you don't want to find it out live. You want to test it out, and then the youth get there and it works and it's great. So, we're not advocating not being prepared, but I am advocating push the boundaries, go outside of your comfort zone. And, really, I didn't think about this a whole bunch, but it's been a little while since our last big flop, probably. So it's probably time.
We're due?
We're due, yeah. And so, but to push those limits, I've used this example before, but it's one I like to use, is when we built a river up here and it was leaking all over. Mm-hmm. So it was a dramatic failure. I mean, we just had water running and it was a mess. I remember having to drain the thing and redo it. But like to your point, we didn't give up.
No.
We redid. I mean, I was here. I told the story on another podcast, but I was here one time all night. I was still in my same work clothes. I was all sweaty and everything at practice Sunday morning because I was still here. So I literally worked through the night because we wanted it to be cool.
Crazy.
And so, but we had this river basically upstairs, and the plastic, they got a hole, a pinhole, but it leaked everywhere. And so I had to drain the whole thing out the window with a pump and take the stuff out, and then we put in a thick plastic, 15 mil, and refill the water, put the dye back in it, put the rocks in it, and
and hope that there wasn't another hole.
Yeah. And so I got teased about that for a couple of years. About, that thing leaked all over or whatever.
Flooded the downstairs.
Yeah, flooded downstairs. Now, this is an unfinished building, by the way. We're not.
They were setting up for something. There was something at that time, because I remember going downstairs and they were setting up tables and we could see water dripping and stuff, and they were scurrying around trying to do so. I think
it was our freedom celebration, our fireworks deal. I think that might have been it.
Could have been.
It might have been it was some kind of event. Yeah.
But it was still on. It wasn't finished, but
they
had set up stuff, and it was kind of funny, I guess.
Yeah. At the time it wasn't. Looking back,
looking back, exactly.
But the thing is we did finally, we got it fixed, and it worked, and it was epic. We had this river with water running, around. It was like 30 feet or something. It was big. We had this river going, and pumps in the water, and people came up, and it was just like amazing. It was incredible, and so. But we made those mistakes because we pushed. We were pushing the outer limits of what can we do that
push
makes
the boundary
it cool.
a bit. Yep.
And that's like kind of where our crazy steep slides come from. Our fast slides is like, okay, let's make this a little steeper.
Yeah. What can we do this time? Yes. Yeah. I agree.
So if you're looking back at your last flop and it was a really long time ago, maybe you're playing it too safe.
Right.
And so, and there's all kinds of stories we won't get into, but
we could take some time. Yeah.
Okay, so number 3, it's not too late. Oh wait, I gotta back up. I forgot my note. See, I made this note in here. Okay, so about failure, I wanted to tell this little story. And somebody might know right off the bat, but I'm going to try to have a dramatic reveal. Okay. So there's this guy years and years and years ago, this guy that worked for a newspaper in Kansas City. And so he worked for the newspaper, and finally his editor fired him, had to let him go.
Yep.
And in his, I guess it might have been an exit interview or whatever, but he fired him because he lacked imagination. This is a quote: lacked imagination and had no good ideas. So that's pretty devastating, right?
That's
it's bad enough to get fired.
Yeah.
But then to get fired
and be like, hey, you lack this, you lack this.
Yeah, you have no imagination. You don't have any good ideas.
Oh.
Yeah, you're gone. And then but this guy didn't stop. So he formed an animation company. So I don't know all the details, but he formed an animation company, a studio. It's called Laugh-O-Gram Studios. But that failed and went bankrupt. So Then he had made a character when he did that studio. He made this character called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and this was like I don't know a lot about this stuff, but it was copyrighted or whatever. It was this like character that he created, and somehow through legality he lost the rights to that character to somebody else. So he moved to Hollywood with $40 in his pocket. Went on to create Mickey Mouse and build one of the most successful entertainment empires in history, Walt Disney.
I have heard of that man, yes.
So, and, I know there's a lot of controversy with Disney right now, but,
Yes.
but I mean, you can't deny he made an incredible, I mean, you think of Disneyland, and all the Disney movies
Everything.
and all these things.
Cruise ships.
Yeah, I mean.
It's worldwide. It's not just,
It's incredible.
It's everywhere.
And he failed.
Yeah.
Got fired.
Lack
just
of
failure.
imagination.
Yeah, another one I wanted to look up, but we don't have time. Is Abraham Lincoln? There was a lot of failures in his life.
There's a lot because when you passed these notes over to me earlier today, I was like, there's a lot of people that have failed. Failed multiple times. I mean, Henry Ford wasn't successful until his 40s.
Right.
Forget his first name, but the founder of Walmart. In his 40s.
Yeah. Is that Sam Walton?
Yes, Walton. There you go. And the list goes on, and it's like some of them just didn't find that success until it just right, or some of them failed, bankrupt companies. There's a gentleman and his wife that founded Gap, the clothing store. They had multiple small retail businesses that completely failed and fell apart, and then they, for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. They tried again, and maybe they took their lessons from their failures, obviously, I would hope, and it became successful now.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's a Gap around anymore.
I think so.
We used to have one at the outlet, I thought.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
so
way.
Proverbs, I wrote Proverbs 24:16 talks about the righteous man, falling 7 times. But the key is, we talk about it all the time, but is he got up. He keeps on getting up.
Yeah, if you stay down, then the story's over.
Yeah, then, then it's a true failure.
Yeah,
But if you flop, that's why I said flop, because failure sometimes sounds definitive,
right?
And it sounds like it's over.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, if you haven't failed in a while or flopped in a while, then maybe it's time to push out of your comfort zone, because that's how. You think of that Disney example or different ones. Yep. That's how they became so successful. Is they had some tenacity.
Yeah. There's even other ones that I was just browsing through. I'm like, that name looks familiar. Click on it. I was like, or ones that actually didn't look familiar. I'm like, wonder what this person's famous for. The creator of IBM, the creator of Intel. They all had just kind of like nothing for their several years, careers, and then all of a sudden, the IBM guy had like 4 different companies that he brought together to create, I think, IBM.
Oh wow!
So I'm like, I could be totally wrong on some of this, but that was just like a brief, scrolling through like all these names. I mean, a lot of them were actors and stuff like that didn't get their big break till later in their career, where that one definitive movie or something really shot them up.
And some of that could look like luck, but it's because they kept trying.
Exactly, yeah. Like they didn't give up. Like, okay, I'll just say this for an actor. They didn't just stop because they didn't get the part.
Right.
No, they tried again for the next one. They tried again for the next one.
Kept on developing their craft.
They take the small role here and then another small one here, and they stack it up until they do get that big lead role, that Oscar award or whatever.
Yeah. Or like the famous story of Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team or whatever.
So that's another great one. And again, there's probably a lot more that you could just be like, had they given up, had Michael Jordan given up, what would things be like today for the NBA?
Oh, yeah. Totally different world.
You talk about how many people growing up watching him at a young age through his career turned into NBA players and stuff like that.
Yeah, he had an impact.
If they hadn't had that, well then, where would they be? Would they not be the? It's crazy to think about. Like, take one little piece out of that puzzle. Someone just decided to give up. I guess I'm not good enough. So I'll just take up something else and whatever. Giving up, failure, flopping.
You got to push. You got to keep pushing. Pushing those limits. Because, if you play it safe, if you did push the limits one time, and it backfired on you, and you're like, well, I don't want that to ever happen again. I got too embarrassed. I got too, whatever. Then you are not maximizing your potential. God created us to maximize our potential. God created us to grow. And so if we are now going against God's will when we don't push those limits.
Yeah. Don't put yourself in that little box of creativity if you can't.
Yes.
Just a small little cube and that's all you stick with. And again, it may work for a period of time. You may see, we get 2-3 bus kids or, this or that, but okay, but don't you want 20?
Yeah.
Don't you want 200?
Yeah.
Exactly. So don't hold that. And again, don't hold back what God has given you to go out there and try, flop, get back up, try it, try a different way.
Well, this makes me think of, and we're spending a long time on this point, that's fine, but it makes me think of our memory verse just recently in Sunday school, James 4:17. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. Well, I feel like that's on a higher level as Sunday school leaders. We know to do good. We know to read. We can look at examples. We talk about Brother Booker all the time. Their Sunday school is amazing. It's awesome. And Brother Chris Bradshaw in Union City, I think it's Union City. That guy is incredible, praying kids through and stuff. So there's these Sunday schools that have these awesome dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And so if nothing else, we can look and say, okay, this can be done. And so we know to do good. And I'm not saying we have to be exactly like them. We're not. We are our own Sunday school. Right? And there's unique Sunday schools all over. Brother James Pelletier, they do an awesome Sunday school, a totally different style, completely different. They have classrooms and separated ages. And so, and all these guys I mentioned, by the way, they have podcasts, which I need to advertise. But
shout out to
those. And I just can't remember all their names. I got to get them on the list.
Next time we'll have the whole.
But anyway, so we have all these Sunday schools that we can look at, and we know that this is. I feel like this is God's will because they're praying kids through, they're reaching out, all these things. And so we know there's that potential there. So we know to do good. And if we don't do it, if we're just like, well, that's not me. It's a different world now.
Yeah.
It's too late.
We're good enough.
Yeah, we're good enough. Then, or like, we tried that.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
And again, I'm sure we've some podcast somewhere here since we've started doing this. This didn't just come to be. Like what we're even doing now.
Oh, right.
So there was failure getting to where we're at. And hopefully there
wherever
will be.
that is.
Yeah. And hopefully, at some point, weird to say, hopefully there is a flop or a failure that we experience.
Yeah. Hey, not too long ago, we had one on the podcast live.
Yes.
And I kept it in the video, Brother Aaron and I. And the wall, did I tell you about that?
I don't know.
The wall fell over.
Yes, you did. Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it during I think you might have mentioned it before one of the last ones we did.
Somebody wants to see that on YouTube. Go look it up. It's
that's right. Yeah,
the podcast is Find the Funny. I think with Brother Aaron. So
it happens.
It was funny. Okay, really, really fast. Number 3, which our timers said, forget it. You guys are taking too long. But number 3 is it's not too late. And so again, talking about some of those world examples, Harlan Sanders. That started KFC, Colonel Sanders, at age 65. Now, I did look it up, and it's kind of confusing. Like, AI said he started at 40, but he didn't. He served some chicken at a gas station at 40. But he did something, and he failed, too. But he was 65 years old. And look at KFC. It's everywhere, whatever you think of it.
It's international.
It's successful, yeah. I didn't know that. It's international.
Yeah.
And he started at 65. So
most people are retired
example.
Or retiring at that point. Yes.
And then a biblical example for you is Moses.
Yep.
He was 80 years old when he saw the burning bush.
Yeah.
He was 40 years old when he killed the Egyptian. Decided to take matters into his own hands. So and I know they lived a little longer back then, but still, that's crazy. So it's not too late. Philippians 1:6 says, "Being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ." So again, that's going back to God designed us
right.
to have potential, and God designed us to keep reaching. You're not done. Going back to the
Right.
title, we'll answer the question. No, you're not done. Not in God's will. You're not done. Okay, number 4, because we are getting close to our time. We got other things we got to go do. It won't just happen. And so I got a couple sub-bullet points. Challenge your assumptions of what's possible in kids ministry and look for opportunities to innovate. And so these things, I guess there's a caveat to this. It won't just happen, but at the same time, God's church will move forward.
Right.
The question is, what's that song? Whatever you're doing in this season,
Yes.
The question is, do you want to? Don't do it without me.
Don't do it without me. Yeah.
Do you want to be a part of it? God's church will move forward. Do you want to be a part of that movement, or do you want to just be sitting in the back pew?
You want to be that guy sitting on the bench talking about 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, talking about,
like,
I remember back when we...
Like,
and man, maybe that's what I'm doing when I talk about that river.
I mean, I think there's some good times to reminisce, but there's still a future ahead. And if your heart's still beating, then I think you'd want to be a part of it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it seems like it. But I see people that it seems like they don't.
Yeah.
It seems like, I think that it can be tempting. Boy, this could go off, and we're out of time. But this can snowball. Matthew and I talked about quit quitting. That podcast, it's got a lot of views. But when we talked about quit quitting, and I think that sometimes that snowballs. You can quit something, and most of us Sunday school leaders wear a lot of hats in the church, and so we do multiple things. And so, like, if I were to quit youth, that would free up my Friday nights.
Right.
And so I could quit that and be like, hey, this is kind of great.
Kick back and enjoy.
I got Friday nights off.
Friday night off.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with that necessarily, but I think that it can snowball, because then it can be like, man, Sunday mornings at 8:30. That's kind of, I get here earlier than that, but that's kind of early.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have to do that, and then, whatever else you
could
do.
Get up and enjoy a nice breakfast before service.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. And so, but I think it can snowball, and pretty soon you're sitting around, you're not doing anything.
Right.
And you don't realize that you have, quote unquote, backslid. I don't mean backslid morally even. You might be full of the Holy Ghost.
Right.
But you have not, you're not reaching that potential. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not. Are we sinning?
Right.
When we do
that's
that?
a good point.
And boy, I don't want to get blasted.
That's a whole nother podcast right there.
Yeah.
Wow, but such truth to that too.
Yeah.
'Cause, I put in my time here.
Yeah.
Now it's time to let someone else, start doing something a little bit. Maybe I don't see them doing anything. They should be.
Yeah, it's tempting to do that.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think we talk about this in like a leadership culture. We need to be replacing ourselves, but not for the purpose of retiring.
Right.
We need to be replacing ourselves so that we can expand God's kingdom, so that we can move on to more things.
And again, I don't think like we're saying you should never stop being part of something. There's I think a time when there's another generation behind that needs to step up too. Like say
and you have another role to fulfill.
Yeah, but don't just I guess wouldn't be maybe just don't step away from everything totally. Like still you can still maybe you're not doing the whole Sunday school portion or whatever. Now you're just helping facilitate.
Well, I'll mention
a bit or something.
The late Brother McKinley.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a memorial service for him not too long ago. So he was retired. He pastored for years, 40 years or something.
Yeah, at least
I
think so.
Many years.
Yep.
Preached, pastored, and then he moved here and, was under our pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, he was older and feeble in a lot of ways, but he was still up there in the altar praying for people, still a part of church. And so, he wasn't like running Sunday school or something.
No.
But he wasn't just put out to pasture, so to speak. He
Right.
was still fulfilling a role.
Yes.
And so it won't just happen. God's church will happen, but it won't just happen unless you do something. So I put the Nike motto down. Just or motto, just do it.
Just do it, yeah.
And so we have to, as Sunday school leaders, we have to make it happen. We are God's hands and feet. You know,
Yes.
It's God's will, and so I want to fulfill that for the kingdom of God. You know,
Right.
I want to be the one that's making it happen. Oh boy, man, this is we could go on and on, but we are out of time.
There's a lot we could keep going on about. Yep.
Let's just do a quick recap here. Number one, it's a different world now. Don't let that be an excuse. Let it be a reason
Right.
for doing better. Don't let it be an excuse to be lackluster. Let it be a reason for being on the cutting edge.
Yep.
Number two, when was your last failure?
Right.
Boy.
I can't think of any. I mean,
yeah, so I need to think of
major.
that. For the next podcast, I need to try to think of our last failure, our last disaster.
I mean, it might have been just a Sunday school lesson or something that flopped
That
for us.
flopped,
That
yeah.
didn't, or didn't, you know, like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's been some where it's like, well, that was a kind of a dud.
Yeah.
But
I think to clarify, that failure should be it should be a failure because you pushed too hard.
Right.
You know, when was your last failure? Okay, like, this wasn't mine personally, but I remember, like, Brennan, when he tried to blow the fire and it didn't work.
I was going to say, there's been...
Yeah, it's been a few
in
months
talking
ago,
about the failure, it's like there's been times where we've planned this, and, you know, and then it did not go one way of how, personally, I guess,
Yeah.
I thought it would go. And I think in others, in minds of like how it was supposed to go, and it
Right.
was just like, well, that was a lot more mess. Like, that did not go to plan at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we
and so-
we spent weeks talking about
Right.
it, planning it,
Yeah,
and
planning it,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh.
Yeah,
But-
and the other podcast is learn from those failures.
Yep. Yep.
But the idea is push the envelope. And then number three, it's not too late. You know, I mean, it's not too late. It's not like, well, I tried. You know, I did all these things. Man, jump back
Yeah.
on the bicycle.
Yeah.
Let's go, you know.
Yeah, I tried Sunday school 5 years ago. It wasn't for me. I'm out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then number four, it won't just happen.
Right.
If we want to be a part of God's kingdom moving forward, we have to. It's up
Yes.
to us, you know. We gotta jump on.
That's with anything in life. It's not just, you know, people are always looking for the quick,
Yeah,
get rich quick or quick success, and it's like, I personally can't think of anybody that's had that just like success. They just boom.
right.
Generally, it's come after failure. Generally, it's come after trying and trying and trying.
And so often we don't see it.
Yep.
We see
Exactly, you don't see.
We see the Disneyland,
Yep.
but we don't
You
hear
know
that story.
Yeah. I mean, how many kids probably don't know
Oh yeah, have
that
no idea.
that at age whatever 40 or
Yeah.
something he was fired from a newspaper,
Yeah,
told
yeah.
he had no imagination,
No imagination.
and no creativity or no good ideas, and it's like to look at it now and be like, wait, that's the same guy.
Yeah, same guy. Yeah. Okay, well, we're over our time, as you can see on the timer. So that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Till next time.